The Third Watch News Update is a part of the Amateur Radio Network.
When you look at the headlines and you look at what's taking place here, you're seeing this great overreach by the deep state. And I'm going to be doing a report on this, folks, because I've got so much information. You're seeing this overreach by the deep state. It has become an adversary of President Donald J. Trump and an adversary to the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and an adversary of every person listening to this broadcast. You've got the Progressive Party, who is an adversaries of freedom and every person within the United States, in the United States. Just to be clear as well, the man sitting in the Oval Office, past and present, can order wiretap surveillance without going through FISA. All that person has to do is file a certification with the Attorney General that the wiretap or the surveillance relates to national security. But here's the kicker. No one can read that. That application, no one can read it. So, I just want to put out the warning right now. The last thing in the world the deep state wants, I believe, the true powers behind the faces in Washington, D.C., the last thing that they want is a congressional investigation into the actions of the intelligence community. But I do believe that's what's going to happen. And I believe that will place Donald J. Trump in peril. I think he's already in peril right now, sadly. You know, for all of the talk, by the way, Russian Ambassador Kislyak, just as a kind of just a little bit of trivia, he visited the White House 22 times, the Obama White House 22 times. Yeah, I know it's different. I know it. I know, under different circumstances. Just saying, however. Excuse me. But we're looking at a very serious situation here. I believe, and I wrote a column Sunday, and it appeared in Canada Free Press. You can comment on it. I don't know if it's aged off or not, but this is as serious as it gets, and I do believe that this is the end game, one of the end games with respect to what's taking place. I don't see this turning out well. I will also mention as well, and I'm looking through some notes I took today, the Executive Order 12333 is something that everyone should be aware of. That sets the tone for that sets the stage for for the surveillance. And this goes on and on and on. The media, the intelligence community, the 16 known intelligence agencies, I say known because I'm sure there are more, they're playing a word game, a linguistics game. And it's to entrap and to take out Donald Trump. And I do believe that Obama going to the FISA court twice, or when I say Obama, not personally, his regime going twice to the FISA court, once in June and once in October, was done in conjunction with, and even at the behest of, the Clintons. That's nowhere to be found, but my research tells me that. I think the Clintons are going to pop into this. But anyway, these are just some of the things we're working on, as well as the Vault 7 release today. 8,761 documents that span 2013 to 2017. Out of those 8,761 documents, there are 7,818 web pages and 943 attachments. There were also 70,875 redactions of email and IP addresses within those documents until they become further studied. We're going to be having more on this as well. But they speak, I believe that they speak for themselves. And I think that those people who said, Michael Hastings, the accident of Michael Hastings, oh, it's ridiculous to think that they could take over a car and smash it into a tree or whatever. Well, there's your proof. You got your proof. TV spying on you, you got your proof. You want to call us conspiracy nuts and kooks and theorists? There's your proof. Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of very interesting developments from the Vault 7 release, as well as the wiretap information. We got a great show lined up for you tonight. We are joined by T.L. Davis this hour. He is with us now. He is a filmmaker, and we're going to...
Hold on a second. I just got an email here. Look. I am not taking Donald Trump to task. Somebody said you're giving Donald Trump is much smarter than you give him credit for. What in the hell are you talking about? Okay? Yeah, I'm talking to you, this emailer.
Because you said he's in trouble?
Well, yeah. Well, Kennedy was intelligent too, wasn't he? Till the bullet blasted the back of his head off. I'm trying to warn people out there that Donald Trump is a target, as we all are. Go on.
All right, T.L. Davis is our guest. He's a filmmaker. His website is christianmercenary.com. And Mr. Davis, welcome to the Hagman and Hagman Report.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. I know this is your first time on the show. And folks, we're going to
Yes, it is.
We're going to be playing Mr. Davis's movie trailer after we come back from the break.
And I didn't mean to yell in your ear.
Yes, he did. Mr. Davis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been working on?
Aside from writing I've written blogs for about the past 15 years or so. And I got involved really with, it started with the, I always forget this, the economic collapse basically really, it started way before that, but that's what really got me into blogging and getting online with a lot of the other big voices in the community, where I learned a lot of stuff, learned a lot of facts and things that you wouldn't know. And so, for the past, it started back in the Bush administration. They always try to label everybody as, well, the only reason you got activated was because of Barack Obama. And everybody I know in this movement had been involved trying to safeguard their liberty for themselves and their posterity for 10 years before Obama came in. It started back, if you want to go back, it probably started, people really started paying attention at Ruby Ridge, so, that's how long this deep state idea has been going on. And having listened to all of these very influential voices,
Mr. Davis, I don't mean, and I generally don't like to interrupt, but I just want to say, in our view, the deep state's been going on since the inception of the CIA back in 1947, and feel free to let it loose, because we don't hold back here, and I know that you're being circumspect. But the Dulles brothers establishment of the CIA. We've had a shadow government ever since then, and I know you know that. I've read your stuff, so don't feel like you got to hold back.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think that's very interesting, because I've been working on a screenplay for a long time, and it's called Banana Republic, and it centers around the Guatemalan overthrow in 1953, and Iran before that, and so. That's how long. I don't know how far back you can go, but I do know that in the early 50s, with after World War II when they sort of created the CIA out of the OSS. This has been part of the way that they operate. And so, and the Dulles brothers, you're right. One was Secretary of State and the other one was CIA. And those guys were playing, chess all across the globe and pretty much having a free hand doing whatever they wanted. And that was kind of my focus in writing the screenplay about Guatemala was you have because they took some land, you all of a sudden you have the CIA down there and just casually overthrowing the government of Guatemala. And they've never been, I think they're a little bit more stable now, but they weren't stable for 20 years after that, or more.
Yeah, that's the business of the CIA. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we're not any different. It might have been a little bit more difficult before everybody started using cell phones and we were transmitting data through routers, but we're not any different. We are just another country with another leader that if you can take them down, you can have the run of the place. So
that's right.
I think you're very astute in saying that we are in some extremely dangerous times. And the film that you referenced, Lies of Omission, everybody who talks, like Mike Vanderbilt, who died, I think in July, but we did the interview at January 16th of last year, and he was warning everybody, this is happening, this is how it goes, this is how they do it. And they're getting closer every day.
Yeah, they are. Now, and as we look at the landscape, I'm very uncomfortable with what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing hearing the tempo rising. I'm seeing the marching get faster. I'm seeing the people on television, the liars that comprise the mainstream media, just they're running for cover, or I shouldn't say running for cover. They're dragging everything out to try to cover themselves based on their lies of, well, to coin a phrase from your film, lies of omission. And we're seeing a lot of lies of omission. By the way, our guest, that's his. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the lies of omission screen there, and the fundraiser for the production of that. But yes. And by the way, I want to mention one more thing, and then I'll just turn it back to you, folks. You got to pray for the conservative commentators, the conservative people like Lou Dobbs. If you noticed him last night, guy was exhausted. And I'm exhausted. We're all exhausted on this side of the fence. And it's because we are attempting to do the right thing, as is our guest, Mr. Davis, trying to get the truth out there amidst all of this barrage of lies by commission and, of course, his film, Lies of Omission. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, if you look at your society today, honestly, that's what you're seeing. Is the accumulation of decades, perhaps a century of lies of omission, where you have down in Guatemala, they had the New York Times reporter was down there, and he sniffed around. He knew that things were about to go south, and he was trying very hard to keep them from going south, and it took nothing to have Alan Dulles make a phone call to the guy at the New York Times and have him yanked back to Mexico, and that's where he stayed. And after all these years, I was looking up Grusin, which was the reporter's name, and the one thing he left that he was still extremely angry with, and I can't think of the guy who owned the New York Times back then, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But the one thing he was still angry about after all of these years when he retired was the fact that he got yanked out of Guatemala, and he knew it was through the CIA, And he knew it was to keep his mouth shut so that news of what was going on down there wouldn't leak out. And so almost everything in your world is a product of the fact that either you've been lied to or you haven't been told the truth. And they're almost exactly the same thing. I would say that lies of omission are more dangerous because a direct lie, you can refute a direct lie, but you can't refute something that's never been reported that nobody knows about. And one of the reasons for us, and it's not just me doing it, I have a co-executive producer as well, Concerned American over at WRSA, Western Rifle Shooters Association. But the one thing that we look at is that here are the voices shouting, but they can't get past the newspaper. They can't get past the broadcast. They can't get anywhere. Cheryl Atkinson destroyed her career. I mean, she landed on her feet, but she destroyed her career by doing something they didn't want done. And so the idea of the film is to go talk to some of these people who aren't from think tanks, who aren't from typical establishment Republicans, and get their angle, because they have no dog in the fight except the truth and self-defense. And talk to them and just ask them random questions and see what they come up with. And it was remarkable that you can have somebody like Larry Pratt, who with Gun Owners of America, basically largely, a lobbyist establishment type guy, had almost exactly the same feelings as some of the furthest right folks that we talked to. So, it isn't like we don't know what's going on. It isn't like everybody doesn't see what's happening. But it just cannot penetrate out into the deal. So the idea for the film was, let's get these voices down, and then we have a weapon at least. Because if a film is successful and people want to see it, there's no way to stop that.
All right. What are some of the things you're focusing on? Just give us some examples. I can think of a number of things going back to, my goodness, with Obama, from his lack of bona fides to the gun running operation Fast and Furious. Just so many things. To the targeting of conservatives via using the IRS to target conservatives, conservative groups. Of course, we saw that. What are some of the things that you're looking at? Subject matter.
Well, a lot of what the film is discussing is American freedom in general. What's happened to it? What was it? What happened to it? And how can we ever get it back? And the answer to the last question is dire, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, but we did focus on Fast and Furious as a classic example with David Codrea and Mike Vanderboot, who broke this story, broke it for months. I was reading about it months before anybody got involved in it. They were both putting it on their web pages.
Right.
They were talking. It wasn't until Brian Terry was killed that it really sort of popped up there, because guns from the ATF gun running operation was found at the crime scene of where Brian Terry was murdered. And but they had been yelling about it for a while. They called it gun walker, and that's what everybody in the liberty community was familiar with. And it became Fast and Furious because that's what ATF's code name for their little project down there was. And so we kind of focused on that as an example of how, no matter what you do, if you cannot break the golden bond between the major media outlets and the truth, if you can't get the truth through them, it's almost impossible. And it took Cheryl Atkinson being a stand-up reporter and just doing her job to get it out there, ultimately to CBS. But she couldn't even get any airtime. So,
No, just to refresh
It's really very difficult.
To refresh people's memory, Cheryl Atkinson was the one who had her computers broken into, right? Benghazi. She was investigating Benghazi, CBS correspondent, reporter, I believe, right? Am I right on this?
Right, definitely.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%. In no time she has her computer hacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, stonewalled.
That's right.
And Stonewall is one of the few books, and I'm not going to say the only one, but one of the few books, and one of the only really successful books that actually gives David Codrea and Mike Vanderboot the legitimate credit that they deserve.
Yeah, actually.
I mean, they were Woodward and Bernstein times 10 because they didn't have anybody backing them up, you know.
Yep. I've got Stonewall on my nightstand. I'm reading it for the second time. A very interesting book. Yeah, and she does give credit, but we have to understand too, and she points this out as well. The ATF gun walking scandal, known as Fast and Furious, a smaller version, a smaller version was started under George W. Bush, out of the Arizona field office of the ATFE. But nonetheless, it was expanded. It was expanded under Obama. Folks, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report. HagmanReport.com is our website. Hagman and Hagman for the show website. Resurrecting under a new banner, of course, HomelandSecurityUS.com. And follow us on our social networking. And please, if you're listening to this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Even if you're listening to this via BTR and Global Star Radio Network, thank you so much, Global Star Radio Network, for carrying our program, and BTR as well. Folks, you're listening to the Hagman Report. Our guest, Teal Davis. We're right back after this. Stay right where you're at.
For the truth of what the mainstream media won't tell you, you are listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the Global Star Radio Network. Please stand by. Doug and Joe will be right back. Listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report, streaming live on the Global Star Radio Network. Don't go away. Doug and Joe will be right back in just a moment. Listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the Global Star Radio Network. Stay tuned. Doug and Joe will be back momentarily.
edition of the Hagman and Hagman Report. There's a lot going on in the world of news. You have the continuing information about the Trump wiretap and the insanity that has been going on in the media since then, as well as the Vault 7 CIA leaks. And you have more insanity from the news coming out about that. There's some really good stuff on Drudge on the right-hand side. It gets into some detail about what these documents talk about. Then you can go right to WikiLeaks if you want to download the file yourself. But they're saying more significant than the Snowden docs. And a lot of this confirms of things that we already knew, but the proof is in there. This segment, we are still joined by our guest, T.L. Davis. ChristianMercenary.com is the website, as well as he has a fundraiser site for Lies of Omission. That is fundraiser, FUNDRAZR.com/Lies of Omission and the number 1. And that's his film, Lies of Omission. We have a trailer that we're going to play for you from Mr. Davis's film. So here you go.
If you could speak directly to the younger generation, what is it about America, about the America of your childhood that is worth stating?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I would quote Leon Trotsky, who said famously that you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you.
I think just the idea of freedom, the idea that you can exist outside of being a subject of a government. We're going to lose our freedom, and I don't think that your generation is even going to be paying attention.
There are many, many people who foresaw.
And the Lies of Omission title, you spoke about that in the last segment. Can you explain that a little bit more, and some of what you found out while making this film?
Well, some of what started the title, what kind of inspired the title, was the director. My daughter had gone to Sundance and watched the film Under the Gun by Katie Couric, and she's not as indoctrinated as I am. She's not as steadfast. She was more appalled by the film in the first 5 minutes at the lousy editing job. There are lies of omission, but then when you look at it, it goes so much deeper than just the media. You know, it's what they do that they don't tell you, that, and it sparks conspiracy theories, and unfortunately most of the conspiracies are right. Because they're really doing it. And so I'm not sure if I answered your question there.
Well, yeah. And you see the continued growth of the government, and the government expanding and branching out into all areas of society, and they just continue to say they're going to do this and that to help the people, but they're really only out to help themselves, and the only thing they help with us is help take away money from our paycheck.
Well, exactly, and it's like today with the revelation of the new Obamacare Light, or however you want to look at it. The fact is, the only thing government has ever needed to do to solve problems is to get out of the situation. Now, there's some things that obviously a government is good for doing, but for the most part, if they would extricate themselves, things would get better. But you have people in office who, they're all running basically the same scam. Give me money so that I can go there and I'll carry the torch for you. And they go there and they drop the torch and they start working for themselves.